Like right now, we need to remember the story of Selma, Alabama. Selma was chosen by civil rights leadership as the battleground for the fight for voting rights, partly because there was already a really robust network of activists there, led by people like Amelia Boynton, but also because the county that Selma was in, it was like 50% Black people, but their percentage of like the people who could vote was so low. It was just such a clear example of race-based voter discrimination. But what I think we don't remember is that the marches from Selma to Montgomery were not planned until law enforcement murdered a man named Jimmie Lee Jackson. So there had been like a march at night to just protest voting discrimination in general. They were met by law enforcement who were basically given immunity, right? Like turn off all the streetlights, go at the protesters, do whatever you need to do. Jimmie Lee Jackson ran into a restaurant with his mother and his grandmother. The law enforcement found them in there, took Jimmie Lee Jackson and shot him. It was as the city of Selma was mourning and was incredibly frustrated and potentially wanting to take more direct violent action in the response of Jimmie Lee Jackson's death that the SCLC leadership, like James Bevel, were able to redirect that frustration and say, we need to march. We need to march from Selma to Montgomery to bring attention partly to like ask the governor, what are you going to do about the murder of Jimmie Lee Jackson? Are you going to investigate this? And two, bring attention to all of their constitutional rights that were being denied to them. Of course, that first march becomes what we know as Bloody Sunday, right? They don't make it across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Law enforcement counters the protests on horseback. They're using tear gas, but this footage was then broadcast on national television. And so all of a sudden, all eyes were on Selma, and a lot of other people that were supportive of the movement start to come down there to join. One of those people was a minister named James Reeb, who was coming down from Boston. He was a member of the SCLC, so he'd been sort of a white ally of Dr. King's organization for a while. He participates in the second sort of failed march. I could get into it, but it's about judges and court orders and whatever. That night, James Reeb and two other ministers are taken by white supremacists, and James Reeb is beaten to the extent that he ends up in a coma and he dies 2 days later. Now, I wish that this weren't the case, but the death of a white minister from the North really got the attention of people who maybe otherwise were looking at Selma and going, oh, that's just terrible, but what can I do about it? So by that point, the third march from Selma to Montgomery was being planned. And that's the moment when Dr. King goes to President Johnson, and President Johnson says, okay, at this point, there's only one clear side. Like, I can't allow this to keep happening. He federalizes the National Guard, and he sends them down to protect the protesters. The march lasted 5 days, 4 nights. They went across 54 miles through mostly rural Alabama. This is the Alabama of Governor George Walz. Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. But because they were protected by LBJ's National Guard sent in, they made it to Montgomery. And because of all of the attention that this series of events and murders had garnered, LBJ and Congress finally passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965.